Today,
Going over to the political part of the podcast, you have Vivek Ramaswamy saying Trump will not allow a central digital bank currency. Now, this comes thanks to Vivek's personal X Twitter account, and he's responding to Malcolm Flex. And Malcolm Flex was saying how how Vivek was already having an impact with Donald Trump, talking about policies, and this was one of those topics that apparently came to that brewed to the surface when it comes to their interactions. And Vivek said, quote, President Donald Trump just made a new promise in New Hampshire tonight, and I have full confidence he will keep it. Quote, tonight, I am also making another promise to protect Americans from government tyranny. As your president, I will never allow the creation of a central digital bank currency. Such a currency would give the federal government absolute control over your money. This would be a dangerous threat to freedom, and I will stop it from coming to America. We're also going to put in place a strong protections to stop banks and regulators from trying to debank you for your political beliefs. That will never happen while I'm your president, unquote. It's a little complex there, a quote within a quote. But nevertheless, that got 4.7 million views and 63,000 likes in the first 24 hours of it being posted, which, as youth might say, is viral to say the least. And again, I think we're already seeing the positive impact that Vivek is having in terms of the Trump campaign and presidential campaign for the. I mean, it's already the default. He's statistically speaking, he's overwhelmingly most likely to get the Republican nominee. I mean, he won Iowa in a landslide, and again, I think Vivek is, excuse me, doing exceptionally well polling with the youth, and he knows a lot. I think there's a lot of benefits to having him involved in the Trump campaign. Right now, he's helping raise funds and propagating ideas, but also bringing these new ideas where, yeah, a central digital bank currency would be detrimental to everyone's freedom. And we've already seen banks demonetizing and debanking people for their political beliefs, and that is literally the definition of dystopian hellhole. Like, no good can come from that. It is being used as a political weapon. And I think more and more Americans are starting to wake up to the fact of how evil that really is. And it's happening, I was going to say outside the country and in our country. I mean, one of the most famous ones that we referenced earlier on the show, if you tuned in when we talked about Sean Strickland, USC, critiquing dictator Justin Trudeau, well, in that country, they fine you for your free speech because you don't have free speech. They fine you for your speech if they don't agree with it. They jail you for your speech if you don't agree with it. And depending on your activities, they freeze and seize your bank accounts. The people who donated to the trucker boycott a couple years ago when they didn't want to take the vaccine, well, their funds were frozen just because they donated to a campaign. Or that specific case, they wanted to donate to the truckers to give them some support. Just donating to that support, again, it was a peaceful protest. The truckers just stopped driving. They weren't doing anything violent. They were just parking the trucks. And yet, just donating to them got your bank accounts frozen. So you couldn't pay your rent. So you couldn't get your groceries. And it's so sad how often I have to reference 1984 by George Orwell and Animal Farm by George Orwell because it's becoming more and more truth. And in some ways, the world is even worse than those books, unfortunately. Perhaps that's the reason why public schools don't teach those books anymore. Well, the teachers are always very busy teaching other horrific, I would say mostly mentally and emotionally vacuous things these days. Great job, teachers' unions. But nevertheless, let's go to the comments and see, is there overwhelming agreement with this sentiment, or am I alone with this? It's time to find out. One of the first comments comes from Brandon Straka. He says, quote, please also tell him that the FBI doesn't need a shiny new building. They need to be dismantled, unquote. That got 9,000 likes, and Vivek responded saying, quote, shut it down. I won't go soft on that one. That got 8.8 thousand likes. Paul D'Souza says, quote, stopping the creation of a central digital bank currency is great for our freedom. What would be even better is to get back to the gold standard. Any chance of that happening, unquote. That got 904 likes. And is there any chance of that happening? I don't think so. There are many reasons I think that would be a lot better since the government couldn't just basically print more money than they ever printed before and cause inflation at astronomical rates, which destroys everyone, unfortunately. But no, kind of like getting people in government to agree to term limits or not making money off insider trading. When you make their own rules, there's not a lot of people who actually decrease their power. It's an exceedingly rare thing. So would they ever go back to the gold standard? No, because then the government couldn't easily manipulate the currency. We have Luke Zaleski chime in. He's probably the top contrarian that contributes to the threads, the comment section on X Twitter for DeSantis as well as Vivek and a couple other Republican nominees. Well, they're no longer nominees. Really, Trump is the only one with DeSantis. I guess Nikki Haley is out there somewhere, allegedly. And Luke said, quote, anyone who ever believed that for 1 second that Vivek was an actual candidate is now humiliated into supporting Trump. That's exactly how this works. That's how this was always supposed to work. That's exactly what I told you would happen and who he always was. Season 2 apprentice op, unquote. And interestingly enough, probably his least liked comment in weeks. He usually gets a couple hundred likes, Luke particularly. They only got 86 likes. I think partially because a lot of people who supported Vivek also already supported Trump because, again, they aligned very much on a lot of their political ideals, their beliefs, and Vivek never really critiqued Trump or his campaign. He never had a combative relationship, so he was never insulting people who a lot of people identify with politicians where they get very, really emotionally invested, so they almost feel personally attacked when you attack the politician, which is ridiculous in and of itself. But nevertheless, because you never did that, I think that's why you never saw really the Trump, the MAGA team or the people who really believe in Trump, excuse me, they never really viscerally attacked Vivek like the other candidates because Vivek really never gave him an excuse to. So I think that's why you're not going to see a lot of people really upset with Vivek. If anything, I'm seeing overwhelming support because now, if anything, they don't see him as any threat at all because he's really not taking any votes away from what they could have perceived him as taking votes away from Trump. Scrolling down a little bit more. Someone by the name of Gift of the Gap says, quote, yeah, so true. And it's a picture of Donald Trump suited up, as all men should, and he's holding his hands to his chest, saluting the flag, and says highly regarded. Is juxtaposed with Justin Trudeau, who, well, yes, he is mentally and morally vacuous. He did have a modicum of intelligence to suit up, did something right. And the pride flag is behind Justin Trudeau, and it says, behind him in the text, it says highly retarded, unquote. And that got 2.4 thousand likes. And for the record, I don't think he is. Yes, he is mentally vacuous. I don't think he is mentally disabled, Justin Trudeau. Wise man once said, never underestimate the competition or your enemy. I think he truly is just that evil to take away civil liberties from citizens of Canada. And again, he's been successful in his evil deed to take away those rights, whether it's freedom of speech, freedom to protect yourself. He even said, well, if someone breaks into your house and tries to hurt you, you're not allowed to shoot them in Canada, which is very similar to New Jersey, which is the importance of why standard ground laws are vitally important to your protection. In New Jersey, you actually have the right to retreat law, where if someone breaks into your house, the burden is on you to leave the premises. And if you defend yourself, you're the one who gets in trouble in court. Let that sink in for New York or New Jersey minute there. It's scary. Just look it up on the internet. The laws around gun ownership and your ability to defend yourself and your family, they basically don't exist in New Jersey. It's quite horrific to say the least. But nevertheless, back to the comments section. Let's see here. A lot of people doing, what is this? A couple GIFs and memes. Oh. Charles Sanson says, quote, this is a home run for Trump. Fantastic that he's come out ahead of this as it's slowly taking over world politics. We have a movement against it in the UK. We have a movement against it in the UK, but it will be massive when DT is back in the White House, unquote. Presumably DT means Donald Trump. And yeah, I butchered the word movement for sure. However, if you click the subscribe button, it may very well assist with my speaking ineptitudes, help me slow down my speech, enunciate more, try not to stutter. I'm just saying, watch the first couple episodes, and believe it or not, the speaking was much worse. There's been a modicum of improvement, perhaps not mountains of improvement, but modicum to say the least. So if you click that button again to subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. Scrolling down to a couple more comments here. Conquistador says, quote, this is the most important election in our lifetime, unquote, getting 591 likes, which I think is true, but it's also, we've been hearing that for the past maybe 12 years, which it is true because the government's gotten so much power throughout our lifetime. It is actually very much important who's in the White House and who's throwing down executive orders, who's taking away your rights, who's trying to tax you more. So it is true. Joey Mariano says, quote, one day you... Again, click the subscribe button to attempt to help with my speaking ineptitudes. Again, Joey says, quote, one day of you on Team MAGA, and he's talking about this. Tell him about the civil service protections too. I'm quoting 876 likes. Here. Avi Shasham says, quote, make cash great again. Unquote, getting 220 likes. So as you scroll down, we'll do one or two more. America Unmasked says, quote, Vivek is already becoming a huge asset for Trump. Unquote, getting 74 likes. Let's see. Woke GDP says, quote, CBDC needs to be stopped in its tracks. Then we need to take the next step and eliminate the price central bank, otherwise known as the Federal Reserve, and return to the gold-backed currency, unquote. Getting 82 likes. And it is quite horrific how much the government has caused inflation throughout all these decades. I was reading a book in which they were talking about pricing, and they were talking about the sale of Opel, the automotive company, from being a German-owned company to General Motors. And I believe the actual figure they used was like, what was it, it's like $22 million at the time over the night. I think it was in 1928 or 1931. And translated for inflation, it's like almost $1 billion now. That's how little our currency is worth these days. Now, the only upside to that ridiculous inflation is the tax stamp for NFA items, also known as the National Firearms Act. So if you want to buy a suppressor, short-barrel rifle, short-barrel shotgun, machine gun, and your state allows it, you can buy it, but you need to pay a tax stamp to the U.S. Treasury Department because it's technically a taxed good. Well, you should be able to tax civil liberties and rights, but they did anyway. Now, at the time, that was 1934. That's a $200 tax stamp. Now, the only silver lining of the regulation of that law was that it did not adjust for inflation. So that's why you see a lot of people buying suppressors and other things nowadays, because $200 now is nothing compared to $200 in 1934 when the law was passed. When the law was passed in 1934, a suppressor was $7. The tax stamp was $200. Adjusted for inflation, $200 back then correlates to about $5,000 now. It's astronomical how much our government has destroyed U.S. currency. Let's see here. So we'll do one more here. Average Joe thinks, says, quote, I like what you've done with the man Vivek. Now convince him to dismantle the CIA, unquote. And that got 93 likes. So over a couple of contrarian statements, but still overwhelming support for Vivek and de facto Donald Trump, as he's quoting Trump for the most part of his tweet. And it'll be interesting to see how much of a positive influence he could have as he's starting to help Trump with his campaign. And of course, the biggest speculation is, will he become a VP? How will he fit into the equation when it comes to Trump? When Trump most likely gets a Republican nominee to run for office, and if he does win. Let me know in the comments. Do you think he'd make an exceptional vice president? Would you rather have him be maybe somewhere in the cabinet? As always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. Again, trying to get 4,000 subscribers by the end of January, so click that button. I really appreciate it. Also, leaving a comment and a like or even a down vote is a great way to give me some additional feedback and let me know how I can make the show better and better. Also, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.